what's in it for us? Not just Africa, Nigeria. And guess who we've got? Mr. Jefferey Hawkins, the U.S. Consular General. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
And welcome to Nigeria.
Thank you
this
very
is the
much.
first time we're getting to meet, actually.
That's right.
Okay, so you want to tell me you voted Obama?
Excuse me?
You want to tell me you voted Obama, right?
Well, I won't say exactly who I voted for, although I will
Yeah.
say that we did have a straw vote here,
Okay.
and I will tell you who I voted for last night here.
In the mock vote, right?
In the mock vote. I wrote in my wife's name.
Really?
I don't know if she won or not, but
Okay then. Well, yes, described as the most exciting elections America has had. They were so close at the time. Now, just 1% separated both parties. But there you've got Mitt Romney giving his speech, and then President Obama, that speech also. And so, in spite of the monies that was spent, presidential system, the same thing we run here.
Yep.
And so, people just tend to always say, okay, what is it that we could see going on here that we could pick here? I mean, yesterday night, so much was said about the process, to the extent that when people actually thought, okay, are we going to see how the electoral college works? But eventually, hey, Barack Obama was declared winner even way before time.
that's right.
So, how did you see the whole process?
Well, I mean, the thing is, this was a remarkable event because it's so ordinary in American politics. Every 4 years, this is the 57th time we've had an election in the United States for president. Every 4 years, we do the same thing. And when democracy becomes habit like that, despite all the excitement and the money that was spent and all the rest, when it becomes habit like that, you know that your democracy is thriving and healthy. And I think that's the beautiful thing. We can have a campaign that's difficult and where there's tensions. We can have almost $2 billion spent by the candidates. But at the end of the day, the elections happen, the people speak, and the two candidates shake hands, congratulate each other, and move on. That's the American system.
Yeah.
I want to believe that this is the first time that the U.S. mission in Nigeria has had an election watch night, as it were. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think we've done it in the past. It's a pretty exciting thing. We like to celebrate this thing. I don't think we've ever done it with this kind of energy before.
Tell us why, I mean, you decided to do this, with the amount of energy you've decided to apply this time around.
Well, I mean, obviously we're very excited about the elections. We're very excited about our process, and we're very proud of our democracy. And we certainly wanted to showcase our system for Nigerians. And it's very interesting. I know you guys have been here all night. And we had a lot of Nigerians, politicians, NGO people, lawyers, those types of people, and the media, of course, here as well to talk about the Nigerian experience of democracy. And so not only are we celebrating our own democracy, but we're exchanging our views with our Nigerian colleagues and friends about how your system works.
Yesterday you had the governor of Ondo State
State,
speak on his own experience and, of course, what he would like. What would you say was striking for you about his speech?
Well, it was obviously very interesting to hear Nigerian perspectives on that. The U.S. mission, both our embassy in Abuja and our consulate here in Lagos, sent observers to Ondo to observe the election. I led the team that went from Lagos. And it was really wonderful to see Nigerian democracy at work. And I remember being in small villages and watching people standing in line, sometimes for hours, waiting to cast their ballots, just like Americans last night were standing in line, on street corners in small towns in America to do the same thing. And so it was really interesting to hear the governor's views on that elections, particularly because we as a mission had watched it so closely.
Yeah, asking questions. We found out that, I mean, you only just came less than 2 months now in Nigeria, and thankfully you've been able to monitor at least one election situation in the country, in Ondo State. I'm sure it was remarkably different that, first of all, we had to shut down the roads, all business stopped, and, it was basically a lockdown for the elections. Was that a shock for you?
Well, I mean, it was a shock because we do things a little differently in the United States. I have to say, as someone observing elections, it was kind of pleasant also. It's nice not to have any traffic and to get wherever you need to go, however you need to get there, quickly, because obviously observers and people like that had special access that INEC granted those of us that were observing the elections.
What would you have changed? I mean, you've observed the process.
Yeah.
In your report, maybe not your report, but personally, what would you have loved to change if you had the past, or if you could recommend?
Well, it's a really interesting question, but I don't feel it's one for me to answer. I'm an American, not a Nigerian. It's for Nigerians to judge how their system works. I mean, we were looking at some of the technical details and looking at things like security and all the rest, and we could offer observations on that if Nigerians are interested. But ultimately, it's your country, it's your system, and you know, for the last over 10 years, it's been working in a democratic fashion.
I've heard people talk about the fact that now that President Obama has no one to contest against, he's got a second term, he's going to slow down on his policies. Do you think so?
I don't think that will be true. I mean, obviously, he's going into his next term the way he left the last one. There's a Republican majority in the lower house, in our House of Representatives.
Okay.
Democrats hold the Senate. That's going to make getting his legislative agenda through difficult. And we're about, as you probably know, we're about to face some fairly significant decisions very early on our budget and our budget deficit and on taxes. And those things have to be addressed right away. So he's going to have to be very active on that. As far as foreign policy, and obviously we're here overseas, I don't foresee any significant change at all. We may have some changes in our foreign policy teams. There's been some hint about that, but Nigeria will remain the central, pillar of our Africa policy, just as it was, last night. Today, it's going to be the same way. This is an important country, and you can look for a strong engagement from the United States here in this country in the second Obama administration.
Yeah, but people say that never really changes, no matter what party wins the White House.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I think because, first of all, I mean, there are certain countries that are just absolutely unavoidable, that are so important that you can't not pay attention to them. Nigeria in Africa is one of those places. You're a regional leader, you're a huge market, you're a major supplier of oil to the United States. Romney, Obama, they're both going to be focused on a country like that. And ultimately, on a wider level, philosophically, despite all the differences and all the ads and all the rest, there really is consensus in the United States on big issues and on the global sweep of foreign policies. You can have differences on individual approaches to individual countries or this or that. But ultimately, there's not that much difference between Democrats and Republicans once you get past the water's edge.
Well, we saw the role that the independents played in these elections. But, I mean, you had Democrats and Republicans, and so have you ever heard of, or are there times where maybe a Democrat or Republican doesn't like a certain policy of his party and so abstains, or they have to vote anyway, whether they like the policy or not?
Well, sure, we have that. I mean, a significant one was Senator Lieberman, who had been a Democrat, lost his primary election and ran as an independent and won. We have, over the course of the history of the United States, had, independents. People, and sometimes people switch entirely from Democrat to Republican. That happens as well. It's unusual, and I think once you're elected, even though there's no law against it, I think, if you've sold yourself as a Democrat or a Republican to your electorate, it's not really fair to switch in midstream, but sometimes it happens.
Okay, we understand that you've been to almost all the states in Nigeria. How did you stay so far?
No, I can't say that. The consulate covers the bottom third of the country, and there's 17 states in our consular district, and I certainly haven't been to all of them. But we do try and get out. An embassy in a capital is about relations with a government. A consulate is about relationships with people. And so we've been, I've been here 2-3 months now. I've been to the Niger Delta 3 times, been to Ondo twice, once before elections and once during elections. Benin City, places like that. I'm trying to get around. I'm trying to meet Nigerians, and I'm trying to establish those bridges between Nigerians.
What about the food? You tried anyone?
The food is great. A little spicy, but great.